The waitress froze when she heard her childhood song in the Millionaire's mansion. The sun was setting over Charleston, South Carolina, painting the sky with strokes of amber and gold. Grace Sullivan stared at her reflection in the employee bathroom mirror of Ellison Manor. Her green eyes betrayed nervousness despite her practiced smile. At 28, she'd waited tables at a dozen places, but never somewhere like this, a mansion that belonged in the pages of architectural magazines, owned by one of the wealthiest men in the state. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, adjusting her crisp white blouse and smoothing her dark hair. It's just another job. But it wasn't. Something about this place felt different, as if she was meant to be here, though she couldn't explain why. Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, rapped sharply on the door. "Grace, the guests are arriving. Time to start serving." Grace straightened her shoulders. "Coming, ma'am." The grand ballroom of Ellison Manor buzzed with Charleston's elite in designer gowns and tailored suits. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors as a string quartet played softly in the corner. Grace moved between clusters of guests, offering champagne with practiced grace. The annual Ellison Foundation fundraiser, a gray-haired woman in diamonds whispered to her companion. "Richard always hosts it on the same date." "Well, it is the anniversary," the other woman replied, lowering her voice. "Of when his daughter disappeared." Grace nearly stumbled, something about their words sending an unexpected chill through her. She'd been briefed that Mr. Ellison was a widower, but no one had mentioned a missing child. Across the room stood Richard Ellison himself, tall, distinguished, with salt and pepper hair and penetrating gray eyes that seemed to hold decades of grief beneath their composed surface. At 58, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of old money and genuine power, yet there was something profoundly sad about him, even as he smiled politely at his guests. "He's never been the same," the gray-haired woman continued. "Not since losing Eleanor and then Sophia." Grace moved away, her mind drifting back to St. Lucia Orphanage where she'd spent her childhood. Sister Catherine's kind face surfaced in her memories, the nun who'd named her Grace, after the name embroidered on the coat she'd been wearing when she arrived. No one knew where she'd come from. No records, no family, no past beyond age 5 when she'd appeared at the orphanage doorstep, silent and confused. "Just a lost little lamb," Sister Catherine would say, stroking her hair. "But God has a plan for you. Child, one day, you'll find where you belong." 23 years, and Grace was still searching. The evening progressed smoothly as Grace navigated between kitchen and ballroom. She was refilling her tray when a sound stopped her cold. Piano notes drifting from somewhere in the mansion. Not the string quartet, but something else entirely. A melody so hauntingly familiar it made her heart race. Without thinking, Grace followed the sound, moving away from the party and down a corridor. The melody grew stronger, pulling her forward like an invisible thread, until she stood outside a partially open door. Inside was a study lined with books, dominated by a grand piano where Richard Ellison sat playing, his eyes closed, the tune wrapped around Grace like an embrace, her head filled with flashes, a woman's voice singing softly, the scent of vanilla, a warm hand stroking her hair. Her tray trembled in her hands. One of the champagne flutes tipped, then another. The entire tray crashed to the marble floor with a spectacular explosion of glass and liquid. Richard Ellison's hands froze above the keys. His eyes snapped open, finding Grace standing there amid the broken crystal, her face ashen. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees to gather the shards. "I don't know what happened." "Leave it," he said, rising from the piano bench. His voice was gentle but commanding. "Are you hurt?" "No, sir, I just..." Grace's voice faltered. "That song..." Richard studied her with sudden intensity. "What about it?" "It's..." Grace swallowed hard. "I know it. Somehow. I know it." Richard Ellison went very still. "That's not possible. I'm sorry. That melody was composed by my wife. For our daughter." His voice tightened. "We never published it. Never recorded it. It was just... ours." Grace felt the room spin slightly. "Maybe I heard it earlier tonight. I haven't played it in years," Richard said. His eyes never left her face. "Not until now, alone in my study." A middle-aged woman appeared in the doorway. Her elegant features hardened with irritation. "Richard, the donors are asking for you." She stopped, taking in the broken glass and Grace kneeling on the floor. "What's happened here?" "Just an accident." "Victoria," Richard said, his eyes still fixed on Grace. "Would you tell Mrs. Winters we need someone to clean this up?" Victoria Ellison's gaze sharpened as it moved between her brother and the young waitress. "Who is this?" "Grace Sullivan," Grace said quickly. "I'm so sorry about the mess, ma'am." "She's new," Richard added. Something in his tone made Victoria frown. "Well, Miss Sullivan, accidents at Ellison Manor can be costly," Victoria said coldly. "Perhaps you'd be better suited elsewhere." "That's enough." "Victoria," Richard said quietly. "It was my fault. I startled her." He turned to Grace. "Miss Sullivan, once this is cleaned up, please come to my office. I'd like a word." Victoria's lips thinned. "Richard, the donors can wait 5 minutes." His tone left no room for argument. After the mess was cleaned and another server took over her duties, Grace found herself back at Richard's study. Her hands were still trembling. He stood at the window, his back to the door. "That song," he said without turning, "was a lullaby. My wife Eleanor sang it to our daughter every night from the day she was born." "Sir, I'm sorry if I upset you. When did you first come to the orphanage, Miss Sullivan?" His question cut through her apology. Grace blinked. "How did you know Your employment application, it listed St. Lucia as your address until age 18. I arrived when I was 5, Grace said. No one knew where I came from. I had no memory of anything before that." Richard turned, his face unreadable. "And now you're 28. "Yes, my daughter would be 28. He moved to his desk and opened a drawer, removing a silver frame. "This was Sophia. She disappeared 23 years ago." He handed Grace the photograph. A smiling, dark-haired woman held a little girl of about 5 beside a piano, the same one in the room. The child had bright green eyes and a heart-shaped face. Grace stared at the image, her blood turning cold. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected the past. "You recognized the lullaby," Richard said quietly. "A melody only 3 people in the world knew." Grace looked up from the photograph, her voice barely audible. "And 2 of them are in this room." Outside the study, Victoria Ellison stood frozen, her hand over her mouth as she listened through the partially open door, her eyes wide with horrified recognition. Grace couldn't sleep that night. Her small apartment felt more temporary than ever as she paced between the kitchenette and bed. The photograph of Sophia Ellison burned into her mind. The resemblance was undeniable. The same green eyes, the same dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. Could it be mere coincidence? Or something more impossible? The melody from the piano kept playing in her head, a haunting refrain that pulled at something deep inside her. She hummed it softly, closing her eyes, trying to grasp at the wisps of memory that seemed just beyond her reach. Morning came with no answers, only questions, and a message from Mrs. Winters that Mr. Ellison requested her presence at the manor at 11, not as staff, but as a guest. Victoria Ellison watched from an upstairs window as Grace walked up the manor's curved driveway. She gripped the curtain so tightly her knuckles whitened. "It can't be her," she whispered. "It's impossible." She'd spent the night digging through old newspaper clippings about Sophia's disappearance, stored in a locked drawer she hadn't opened in years. The headlines screamed across time, "Ellison heiress missing. Search continues for industrialist's daughter. No leads in Sophia Ellison case." Victoria smoothed her silk blouse and fixed her face into a mask of composure. Whatever game this waitress was playing, she would not succeed. Too much was at stake. Downstairs, Mrs. Winters led Grace to Richard's study. The piano loomed in the corner, silent now, but somehow still resonant with last night's melody. "Miss Sullivan." Richard rose from behind his desk. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Ellison." Grace's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I want you to know I'm not trying to insert myself into your life. Last night was strange, but please," Richard gestured to a chair. "Sit. I've spent 23 years looking for answers. A few more minutes won't hurt." As Grace sat, Victoria entered without knocking. "Good morning. I hope I'm not interrupting." Richard frowned. "Victoria, this is a private, family matter." Her smile was tight. "Which is exactly why I should be here." After all, I've been handling the family affairs since Eleanor died. Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Victoria took a seat, angling it to face both her brother and Grace. "Miss Sullivan," Richard began, "tell me about your earliest memories." Grace took a deep breath. "I don't remember anything before the orphanage. Sister Catherine found me on the steps one morning in October. I was wearing a navy blue coat with Grace embroidered on the collar. That's how I got my name." "October what year?" Richard asked, his voice carefully controlled. 2002. Richard and Victoria exchanged a glance. Sophia had disappeared in October 2002. "Go on," Richard encouraged. "I was confused. Didn't speak for weeks. The doctors said it might be trauma or shock. Eventually I started talking, but never remembered what happened before. Sister Catherine said, that's not uncommon with young children who experience something difficult." Victoria leaned forward. "And what makes you think you have any connection to the Ellisons, besides apparently recognizing a piece of music?" Grace met her gaze. "I don't know that I do. I came here today because Mr. Ellison asked me to, and because..." She hesitated. "Because I've spent my whole life wondering who I am. Wouldn't you?" Richard stood abruptly. "Would you be willing to take a DNA test, Miss Sullivan?" Victoria started. "Richard, this is absurd." "Would you?" he repeated, ignoring his sister. Grace nodded slowly. "Yes, I would." "Richard," Victoria hissed, "may I have a word privately?" They stepped into the hallway, closing the study door. "Have you lost your mind?" Victoria whispered fiercely. This woman could be anyone. A con artist, an opportunist who somehow found out about Sophia and is playing on your grief. And if she's not, Richard countered, if there's even a chance. The chances are 1 in millions, Victoria insisted. Look at yourself. One waitress drops a tray because she claims to recognize a song, and you're ready to believe she's your long-lost daughter. Richard's gray eyes hardened. I'm not a fool, Victoria. I'll proceed with caution, but I will proceed. Inside the study, Grace stood by the bookshelves examining the titles. Something about the room felt familiar. The way sunlight slanted through the windows, the faint scent of lemon furniture polish. Her fingers trailed over a collection of leather-bound classics. A flash hit her. Tiny hands pulling books from a lower shelf. A woman's gentle voice saying, "Careful, little one. Those are special." She stumbled back as Richard and Victoria re-entered. "Are you all right?" Richard asked, concerned. Grace shook her head. "For a second, I thought I remembered something." "About books," a woman's voice. Victoria rolled her eyes. "How convenient." Richard shot his sister a warning look before turning back to Grace. "I'd like to hire a private investigator to look into your background, with your permission. And Dr. Marshall, our family physician, can handle the DNA testing discreetly." "I have nothing to hide," Grace said. "Good." Richard handed her a business card. "Dr. Marshall will see you tomorrow at 2. In the meantime, I'd like you to take a few days off from your serving duties. With pay, of course." "That's not necessary." "I insist." After Grace left, Victoria poured herself a drink from the crystal decanter. "You're making a mistake, Richard." "Perhaps," he conceded, "but it's mine to make. And what about your responsibilities to this family? To the company? How will it look when word gets out that Richard Ellison is DNA testing random waitresses chasing ghosts?" Richard's voice went cold. "No one is to know about this. Not the board, not your society friends. No one." Victoria downed her drink. "Fine, play detective, but don't come crying to me when she turns out to be nothing but a clever fraud." That evening, Grace walked the quiet streets of her neighborhood, trying to clear her head. The melody still played in her mind, and now images flashed intermittently. A garden with white roses, the smell of vanilla, a woman's hand stroking her hair. Were they real memories, or just her imagination? Desperate to fill in the blanks, her phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello? Miss Sullivan, this is Victoria Ellison." Grace's steps slowed. "Yes, I'll be direct. What do you want, money? A settlement? Name your price to disappear and spare my brother further pain." Grace stopped walking entirely. "Excuse me, everyone has a price," Victoria said coldly. "What's yours?" "I don't want your money." "Mrs. Ellison." "Then what? Position? Influence, the Ellison name, the truth, Grace said simply. That's all I've ever wanted. There was a long pause. Be careful what you wish for, Miss Sullivan, Victoria finally said, her voice like ice. Some truths are better left buried. The line went dead. Grace stood frozen on the sidewalk, a chill running down her spine. Despite the warm evening, in her mind, the melody played on, but now it carried an undertone of warning. Meanwhile, back at the manor, an elderly man trimmed roses in the fading light. Mr. Stevens had been the Ellisons' gardener for over 40 years. He watched from beneath the brim of his weathered hat as Victoria stalked across the lawn toward the guest house where she lived. He'd seen that look on her face before, 23 years ago, the night little Sophia vanished, and it terrified him. The next morning, Victoria Ellison sat across from Jeffrey Landon, the private investigator Richard had hired. She'd intercepted him in the garden pavilion before he could meet with her brother. Mr. Landon, I want to be absolutely clear, she said, sliding an envelope across the table. My brother is emotionally vulnerable. This woman, this Grace Sullivan, is exploiting that vulnerability. Landon peeked inside the envelope, noting the stack of $100 bills. Miss Ellison, I was hired by your brother to find the truth, Victoria cut in smoothly. And that's exactly what I want too. But doesn't the truth sometimes need guidance? The investigator's face remained impassive. What exactly are you suggesting? Victoria leaned forward. When you investigate Miss Sullivan's background, I expect you'll find inconsistencies. Emphasize those in your report. And if you discover any link between her and this family prior to her employment, I want to know first. That would be a breach of my agreement with Mr. Ellison. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Consider it an addendum. There's more where that came from. Landon pocketed the envelope without commitment. I'll conduct a thorough investigation. That's all I can promise. As he walked away, Victoria pulled out her phone and dialed another number. It's me, she said when the call connected. I need those orphanage records to disappear, immediately. Grace arrived at Dr. Marshall's office promptly at 2 o'clock. The physician, a kind-faced man in his 60s, had been the Ellison family doctor for decades. This won't take long, he assured her, swabbing the inside of her cheek. Richard has already provided his sample. How long until we know the results? Grace asked. Normally, a few days, but Richard has requested expedited processing. We should know by tomorrow afternoon. Dr. Marshall studied her face. You do bear a remarkable resemblance to Eleanor, Sophia's mother. Grace hesitated. Did you know Sophia? I delivered her, Dr. Marshall said quietly. Attended to every childhood illness, every vaccination. I was there the night they realized she was missing. I've never seen a man break the way Richard did that night. What happened to her? To Sophia? The doctor sealed the DNA sample. She went to bed as usual. The nanny checked on her at 9. By morning, she was gone. No signs of forced entry. No ransom demand ever came. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. And Mrs. Ellison, Eleanor never recovered from the shock. Spent years searching, following the flimsiest leads. She died of heart failure 5 years later. Though if you ask me, it was a broken heart that killed her. He paused. Richard thinks it might have been an inside job. Someone who knew the house, the security system. Grace thought of Victoria's cold eyes, her thinly veiled threats. Did they have any suspects? None that stuck, Doctor. Marshall placed the sample in a secure container. The police investigated everyone. Staff, family, friends. Nothing concrete ever emerged. Back at the manor, Grace found Richard waiting in the foyer. Dr. Marshall called to say everything went smoothly, he said. Would you like to see the rest of the house? Grace nodded, feeling both drawn to and apprehensive about what she might discover. Richard led her through rooms of understated opulence. The formal dining room, the conservatory, the library. Each space triggered vague sensations of familiarity. Like déjà vu, this was Eleanor's favorite room, Richard said as they entered a sun-filled solarium filled with orchids. She would read here for hours. The scent of the flowers hit Grace like a physical force. Suddenly she was small, curled in a wicker chair, watching a beautiful woman water plants and hum that melody. White orchids, Grace whispered. She loved white orchids. Richard's eyes widened. Yes, how did you know? Grace shook her head, disoriented. I don't know. I just saw it. They continued upstairs. Pausing outside a closed door at the end of the hallway, Richard's hand hesitated on the doorknob. This was Sophia's room, he said quietly. I've kept it exactly as it was. He opened the door to reveal a child's bedroom frozen in time. Pale blue walls. A canopied twin bed, shelves filled with stuffed animals and books. A child-sized desk with crayons still arranged in a neat row. A dollhouse replica of Ellison Manor itself. Grace stood in the doorway, afraid to enter. This room belonged to a ghost she might be. It's okay, Richard encouraged gently. She stepped inside, drawn to a music box on the nightstand. Without thinking, she lifted the lid. The familiar melody began playing, and Grace closed her eyes. You used to wind it up every night before bed, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. You wouldn't sleep without hearing it first. Grace opened her eyes. You believe I'm her, don't you? Even without the DNA results. I believe it's possible, he answered carefully. The resemblance, the melody, the things you seem to remember. It's more hope than I've had in 23 years. Outside in the hallway, Mr. Stevens was dusting the antique table near Sophia's room. He glimpsed Grace through the open door and dropped his cloth, face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. Victoria appeared at the end of the hall, stopping abruptly when she saw the elderly gardener staring into the bedroom. Stevens, she snapped. Don't you have roses to attend to? The old man flinched. Yes, ma'am, just finishing up in here. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she watched him hurry away. Then she composed herself and approached the bedroom, giving the grand tour, Richard. Her voice dripped with false lightness. How charming. Richard frowned. We were just finishing up. Good. The board is waiting for you. Emergency meeting about the Singapore merger. They've called 3 times. Richard checked his watch. I completely forgot, Miss Sullivan. Grace, will you excuse me? After Richard left, Victoria lingered in the doorway, watching Grace touch the small objects in Sophia's room. You're good, Victoria said finally. Very good. The wide-eyed innocence, the convenient memories that seemed to surface at just the right moment. Grace turned to face her. I'm not playing any game, Ms. Ellison. No. Victoria stepped into the room. Let me be perfectly clear. Richard built this empire from nothing. I've spent 20 years helping him run it while he grieved. If you think you can waltz in and claim a piece of it, I don't want your money, Grace interrupted. Everyone wants something. Victoria picked up a framed photo of young Sophia. What is it you want, Grace Sullivan? Or whatever your real name is? I told you, the truth. Victoria's laugh was cold. Truth is malleable, my dear. It bends to power, to money, to will. Remember that. She set down the photo and left, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood. Alone in Sophia's room, Grace sank onto the edge of the small bed. Her head ached with half-formed memories, impressions that might be real or just wishful thinking. A soft knock drew her attention. Mr. Stevens stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Pardon me, miss, he said, his weathered face anxious. I shouldn't be talking to you, but I need to tell you something. About what? The old man glanced nervously down the hallway. About the night Miss Sophia disappeared. I saw something. Something I never told the police. Grace's heart pounded. What did you see? Stevens leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. It was Miss Victoria, late that night, by the service entrance. She wasn't alone, and she was carrying... Stevens. Mrs. Winters called from the staircase. Miss Victoria is looking for you. Something about the roses for tomorrow's luncheon. The gardener straightened, fear flashing across his face. Coming, Mrs. Winters. He gave Grace an apologetic look. I've said too much already. Be careful, miss. Some secrets in this house have sharp teeth. He hurried away, leaving Grace with more questions than answers, and a growing sense that the shadows of the past were beginning to take shape in the present. The following morning, Grace drove to St. Lucia Orphanage on the outskirts of Charleston. The 2-story brick building had changed little over the years. The same weathered statue of the saint at the entrance, the same creaking porch steps, the same feeling of both sanctuary and confinement. Sister Catherine was waiting in the small office, her once auburn hair now completely silver, face lined but eyes still bright with kindness. "Grace." The nun embraced her. "When you called, I could hardly believe it. Tell me everything." Over tea and chipped mugs, Grace explained the events of the past few days. The melody, the resemblance, the fragments of memory. Sister Catherine listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Sister?" Grace prompted when she finished. "What is it?" The nun set down her mug. "There was always something different about your arrival here. Most abandoned children come with something. A note, a blanket, some explanation. You had only that coat with your name, and you were older than most. 5 is unusual. You never told me this before. What was I to say? That I suspected something wasn't right." Sister Catherine sighed. "The police investigated, of course. They thought perhaps you'd been kidnapped from somewhere else, abandoned when things got too difficult. They checked missing children reports. But what? The detective said wealthy families often handle such matters privately, especially if they suspect someone close to them." Grace leaned forward. "Did anyone ever come looking for me? From the Ellison family?" Sister Catherine hesitated. "Not exactly, but about a month after you arrived, a woman called, didn't give her name, asked very specific questions about a little girl who might have been brought in recently. When I described you, she hung up abruptly. Could it have been Eleanor Ellison? Possibly." She seemed desperate. The nun reached for Grace's hand. "There's something else. 2 days ago, a man came asking for your records. Said he was from social services. Needed to verify something. I told him those records were private." "What did he look like?" "Tall, well-dressed, had a business card, but it felt off. I didn't show him anything." Grace squeezed the older woman's hand. "Thank you, Grace." Sister Catherine's voice grew solemn. "If you are this Sophia Ellison, if you were taken from your family, be careful. Whoever did it has kept this secret for over 20 years. They won't give it up easily." Victoria paced her guest house, phone pressed to her ear. "What do you mean you couldn't get the records? I don't care what excuse you use. Warrant, court order, bribe. Those files need to disappear before Landon sees them." She listened, growing more agitated. "No, that's not acceptable. Handle it, or our arrangement is terminated, permanently." She hung up just as her laptop chimed with an incoming video call. It was Landon. "Report!" she demanded, accepting the call. The investigator's face filled the screen. "I've been digging into Grace Sullivan's background. 23 years at St. Lucia, then community college, a string of waitressing jobs. Nothing remarkable. That's it. Nothing suspicious. Actually, the opposite. Her life is too clean. No criminal record, no debt, no suspicious connections. She's exactly who she appears to be." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Keep looking. Everyone has secrets. There is one thing," Landon added. "I've been trying to access the orphanage's intake records from 2002. They're sealed tighter than usual for some reason. Find out why," Victoria ordered, ending the call. She moved to the window, watching Richard and Grace walking through the garden below. Her brother was pointing out various flowers, laughing in a way Victoria hadn't seen in years. Her jaw clenched. Everything was at risk. Her position at Ellison Industries, her status in Charleston society, the fortune she'd managed for decades. If this waitress really was Sophia... No, she wouldn't allow it. Richard led Grace through the rose garden, carefully skirting the section where Mr. Stevens was pruning. "Eleanor designed this garden," he explained. "The white roses were her favorite. She called them her moonlight garden, because they seemed to glow in the evening." Grace paused by a particularly lush bush. "White roses," she murmured, "with the sweetest scent." Another memory surfaced. Small hands carefully placing a white petal in a picture book. A woman's voice saying, "We'll preserve it forever, like our memories." Richard watched her closely. "You remembered something." "Just fragments," Grace admitted. "It's like trying to catch smoke." They continued walking until they reached a small stone bench beneath a willow tree. "I found something I want to show you," Richard said, producing an envelope from his jacket. "After Eleanor died, I packed away most of her things. It was too painful, but last night, I went through her personal papers." He handed Grace a letter. The paper yellowed with age. She wrote this about a year after Sophia disappeared. Grace unfolded it carefully. My dearest Richard, another night without sleep. I keep thinking I hear her calling for me. The police say we should accept that she's gone. But a mother knows. She's out there, Richard. I feel it. Something has been troubling me. The night before it happened, I saw Victoria watching Sophia in the garden with such a strange expression. When I asked what was wrong, she said, "Nothing should be that precious to anyone." It struck me as odd then. Now it haunts me. I know you don't want to consider it, but we must face the possibility that whoever took our daughter wasn't a stranger to this house. With all my love and grief, Eleanor. Grace looked up, her throat tight. She suspected Victoria. Richard took back the letter, folding it carefully. Eleanor and Victoria never got along. My sister was jealous of our happiness, I think. But to suspect her of something so monstrous. He shook his head. I dismissed it as Eleanor's grief talking. And now? Now I don't know what to think. Richard's phone buzzed. It's Dr. Marshall, the preliminary DNA results are in. Grace's heart pounded as he answered, putting the call on speaker. Richard? The doctor's voice came through. I've reviewed the initial analysis. It's not conclusive yet, but the markers show a strong probability of paternal relationship. I'd estimate over 90% likelihood, pending the full panel. Richard closed his eyes briefly. Thank you, Marshall. When will we have the final results? Tomorrow morning at the latest. After ending the call, Richard and Grace sat in weighted silence, the implications hanging between them. If it's true, Grace finally said, if I am Sophia, what happens next? I don't know, Richard admitted, but we'll figure it out together. From his position among the rose bushes, Mr. Stevens watched their conversation. He didn't need to hear the words to understand their significance. The old gardener's gnarled hands trembled slightly as he clipped a dead stem. 23 years of keeping a terrible secret had worn on his soul. He'd been a coward that night, pretending he hadn't seen Victoria with that man, hadn't seen the small, still form they carried to the waiting car. He'd told himself it wasn't his business, that he needed the job. But now, watching Grace, who was undoubtedly Sophia Ellison, the weight of his silence became unbearable. As darkness fell over the garden, Grace returned to her apartment, her mind reeling from the day's revelations. She tried to sleep but found herself haunted by the melody from the music box. The white roses, Eleanor's desperate letter. She finally drifted off near dawn, only to be plunged into a vivid dream. A woman's face, beautiful but sad, leaning over her. Sleep tight, my angel, she whispers, the familiar melody playing nearby. Then darkness, a different face, Victoria's, looming above, cold and calculating. A man's voice, unfamiliar. Make sure no one sees us. The sensation of movement, of being carried, the smell of cigarettes and cheap cologne. Then nothing. Grace jolted awake, gasping. Sunlight streamed through her blinds. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Richard and a text message. The final results are in. 99,97% match. Please come to the manor as soon as you can. She stared at the screen, a strange mixture of vindication and terror washing over her. She was Sophia Ellison, and someone had gone to great lengths to make her disappear. Grace sat across from Richard in his study. The DNA results spread between them on the desk. The clinical language couldn't dilute the emotional weight of what they confirmed. Grace Sullivan and Richard Ellison shared genetic markers consistent with a father-daughter relationship. Probability, 99,97%. All these years, Richard said, his voice unsteady. You were alive, out there, so close. Grace, or Sophia, as she was beginning to think of herself, struggled to absorb the reality. I don't understand how this happened. Why didn't anyone find me? We looked everywhere. Richard ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. Private investigators, police, FBI. Eleanor spent every waking moment searching until her health failed. We followed every lead, every rumor. But I was just at St. Lucia, 20 miles away, which is why no one thought to look there, Richard said bitterly. It was too obvious, too close. We were convinced you'd been taken out of state, or worse. He couldn't finish the thought. Grace reached across the desk, taking his hand. The gesture felt simultaneously strange and natural. I'm here now. The The door swung open without a knock. Victoria stood in the threshold, her face ashen as she took in the scene. "So it's true," she said flatly. "You actually believe this woman is Sophia?" Richard held up the results. "It's not a matter of belief anymore, Victoria. DNA doesn't lie." Victoria stepped into the room, her eyes fixed on Grace. "Tests can be manipulated. Results can be faked. Dr. Marshall has been our family physician for 30 years, Richard countered. "He has no reason to fabricate this, doesn't he? The prestige of discovering the long-lost Ellison heiress. The book deals, the interviews." Victoria turned to Grace. "What did you promise him as your cut?" "That's enough." Richard's voice cracked like a whip. "I won't have you speak to my daughter that way." The word hung in the air between them. Daughter. For the first time, he'd said it directly. Claimed her. Victoria's face hardened. "Your daughter has been gone for 23 years. This stranger appears, and suddenly you're ready to welcome her with open arms. What about everything we've built? The company, our position. None of that matters compared to finding Sophia." Richard interrupted. "Clearly." Victoria's voice dripped with venom. She shot a last poisonous look at Grace before storming out, slamming the door behind her. Richard sighed heavily. "I apologize for my sister. This is difficult for her." "Why?" Grace asked. "Why is it difficult for her specifically?" Richard hesitated. Victoria never married, never had children. The company, the Ellison name, it became her whole identity. And after we lost you and Eleanor died, I relied on her. Perhaps too much. She sees me as a threat," Grace said quietly. "She'll come around," Richard assured her, though his tone lacked conviction. "What matters now is helping you regain what was taken from you. Your identity, your history, your place in this family." After lunch with Richard, Grace wandered the manor alone, seeing it through new eyes. Not as an employee, but as the home that should have been hers. Each room held potential memories, doors to a past she'd been denied. On the 3rd floor, she discovered a narrow staircase leading to the attic. Something pulled her upward, into the large, dim space filled with furniture draped in sheets, trunks, and boxes labeled in neat handwriting. Grace moved among them, drawn to a section marked Eleanor Personal. She hesitated only briefly before opening the first box. Finding photo albums, journals, and trinkets carefully preserved, the largest album was bound in blue leather with family embossed in gold. Grace settled on an old trunk and began turning pages. Baby photos of a dark-haired infant, herself, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, Eleanor and Richard smiling, looking so young and happy with their daughter between them. Halfway through, a particular photo made her gasp. 5-year-old Sophia stood before the manor's grand piano, wearing a blue dress that matched Grace's memory. Around her neck hung a silver heart-shaped locket. Grace touched her throat instinctively. That locket. She remembered it. The weight of it. The cool metal against her skin. Inside had been a tiny photograph of her mother. "I had a necklace," she whispered to the empty attic. A heart locket. She turned the page, finding more photos of young Sophia wearing the same necklace. In one, she was opening the locket, showing the photo inside to the camera. Grace was so absorbed that she didn't hear the footsteps until a shadow fell across the album. "Find anything interesting?" she startled, looking up to find Victoria standing over her. "I was just snooping." Victoria's smile was razor thin. "Looking for my past," Grace corrected, standing to face her. Victoria's gaze flicked to the open album. "Ah, playing dress-up with Sophia's memories. How touching." "They're my memories," Grace said firmly. "I am Sophia." "So you say." Victoria reached past her, closing the album with a snap. "You know, I've been thinking, if you really are who you claim to be, there are certain things you would remember, details no imposter could know. Like the silver heart locket," Grace said. "The one in these photos. It had Mother's picture inside. I remember the weight of it around my neck." Something flashed in Victoria's eyes. Surprise. Alarm. A common enough jewelry item for a little girl. "I lost it," Grace continued, watching Victoria closely. "The day everything went dark. I never saw it again." Victoria's perfectly manicured nails dug into the album cover. Such convenient memories you have. Always just enough to convince Richard, never enough to be verifiable. The DNA can be falsified by anyone determined enough. Victoria stepped closer. Let's be honest with each other, Grace. You've managed to fool my brother, and perhaps you even believe your own fantasy. But I know what you are, an opportunist who saw a lonely, grieving man and a fortune ripe for the taking. You're wrong. Am I? Victoria raised an eyebrow. Then answer me this. Why now? Why wait 23 years to discover your identity? Why not 10 years ago? Or 15? Grace held her gaze. Because I wasn't serving champagne in your house 10 years ago. I didn't hear the melody until now. Victoria laughed. A brittle sound. How perfectly cinematic. The long-lost heiress returned at last, recognized by a childhood lullaby. She shook her head. You can't imagine what you're disrupting. The plans, the futures you're threatening. I'm not threatening anything except the lie that Sophia Ellison disappeared without a trace. Victoria's composure slipped for a moment, her face contorting with something that looked almost like panic. Then the mask returned. Careful, dear, she warned. Some questions are dangerous to ask. Some doors shouldn't be reopened. She turned to leave, then paused at the attic stairs. Richard is a trusting man. Always has been. It makes him vulnerable. Remember that? After Victoria left, Grace returned to the album, studying each photo intently, searching for clues. She turned to the last page and froze. There was one final picture. Sophia and Eleanor in the garden, surrounded by white roses. In the background, partially obscured but unmistakable, was Victoria, watching them with an expression of raw, undisguised hatred. Grace closed the album, her heart racing. She needed to find Mr. Stevens to hear what he'd been trying to tell her about the night Sophia. She disappeared. As she descended the attic stairs, she didn't notice the small figure watching from the shadows of the landing below. Mrs. Winters observed her with troubled eyes, then slipped away to the servants' quarters where her phone waited. Miss Victoria. She was in the attic, looking at the old albums. The housekeeper listened. Yes, ma'am. I understand. I'll keep watching. In the garden, Mr. Stevens clipped roses with trembling hands. His conscience had kept him awake for nights now. He'd made his decision. Tomorrow, he would tell Grace everything he saw that night 23 years ago, even if it cost him his job, even if it cost him his life. Morning dew still clung to the roses when Grace found Mr. Stevens in the garden. The old gardener was alone, methodically deadheading flowers with practiced precision. He glanced up as she approached, his weathered face tightening with recognition and something else. Fear. Miss Grace, he acknowledged, his voice lowered. Or should I say Miss Sophia? You know. Then? She asked, joining him beside a lush white rose bush. Stevens nodded. The whole staff knows. Mrs. Winters made sure of that. He clipped another dead bloom. Though some of us suspected from the moment you walked in. You wanted to tell me something. Grace reminded him gently. About the night Sophia. I disappeared. The gardener's hands stilled. Not here. Too many eyes and ears. Where then? The old greenhouse, end of the property, noon. He resumed his work, not meeting her eyes. Go now. Different directions. Grace wandered through the gardens for another 15 minutes before casually making her way back to the house. Inside, she found Richard in his study, reviewing documents with Landon, the private investigator. There you are. Richard smiled warmly. Jeffrey was just updating me on his investigation into your disappearance. Landon nodded politely. Miss Sullivan? Or Miss Ellison, I should say. Any developments? Grace asked. Some, the investigator hedged, glancing at Richard, who nodded permission to continue. I've been looking into the seat, Lucia records from 2002. Strangely, someone accessed those files recently, and certain documents appear to be missing. Missing? Grace frowned. The intake report on your arrival, specifically. Sister Catherine confirmed it existed, but it's gone now. Landon closed his notebook. Someone doesn't want us connecting the dots between Sophia's disappearance and Grace's appearance at the orphanage. Richard's expression darkened. Victoria has been making calls. Do you think... I can't speculate, sir, Landon interrupted professionally. But I'm following every lead. He checked his watch. I should get going. I have an appointment with a former police detective who worked your daughter's case. After Landon left, Richard turned to Grace. We need to discuss your future. Legally, financially. Is that necessary? I mean, I don't expect... You're my daughter, Richard said firmly. The DNA proves it. You are Sophia Ellison, and everything that entails, including your rightful inheritance and position. Grace felt a wave of discomfort. I didn't come forward for money. I know that, Richard smiled, which is precisely why I trust you with it. The board meeting is tomorrow. I intend to announce your return and begin the process of installing you as my heir. So soon. 23 years is hardly soon, Richard said, a catch in his voice. I've lost too much time with you already. At noon, Grace slipped out a side door and made her way to the old greenhouse. The structure was Victorian, its glass panes clouded with age, many cracked or missing entirely. Inside, climbing vines had reclaimed much of the space, creating a secret garden feeling. Mr. Stevens was waiting, nervously twisting his cap in gnarled hands. Thank you for coming, Grace said. The old gardener nodded. Been waiting 23 years to say this, though I never thought I'd get the chance. He took a deep breath. The night you disappeared, I was in the caretaker's cottage. That's where I lived then. Couldn't sleep, so I was sitting on my porch, having a smoke. He pointed toward the distant cottage. From there, you can see the service entrance to the main house. It was past midnight when I saw Miss Victoria come out that door. She wasn't alone. Who was with her? Grace asked, her heart pounding. A man I didn't recognize. Tall, well-dressed. They were carrying something. Stephen swallowed hard. Someone. A child. Wrapped in a blanket. At first, I thought maybe you were sick, that they were taking you to the hospital, but they didn't go toward the main gate. They went to the old service road, where a car was waiting. Grace felt the blood drain from her face. You saw Victoria taking me away. Stevens nodded miserably. The next morning, when they said you were missing, I knew, but I was a coward. I had a family to support. Couldn't risk my job, so I kept quiet. Tears welled in his roomy eyes. Been living with that shame ever since. The man, Grace pressed. Did you ever see him again? Would you recognize him? Never saw him again. But yeah, I'd know that face anywhere. Cold eyes, like a shark. You need to tell this to Richard. And to Landon. Fear flashed across Stevens's face. Miss Victoria would ruin me, my daughter, my grandkids. They depend on what I leave them. We can protect you, Grace assured him, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. This is the evidence we need. A noise outside the greenhouse made them both freeze. Footsteps crunched on gravel, then receded. I have to go, Stevens whispered urgently. Think about what I said. Be careful who you trust. He slipped out a broken pane at the back, disappearing into the underbrush. By early afternoon, storm clouds had gathered over Charleston. Grace sat in the manor library, trying to process Stevens's revelation. The pieces were falling into place. Victoria's hostility, the missing records, Eleanor's suspicions. But why? What could drive someone to steal their own niece, to destroy their brother's family? The library door opened, and Victoria entered, elegant in a tailored navy suit. She arched an eyebrow at finding Grace there. Catching up on family history, she asked, her voice honey over steel. Something like that, Grace replied carefully. Victoria moved to the bar cart, pouring herself a whiskey. Richard tells me he's announcing your return at tomorrow's board meeting. Rather premature, don't you think? The DNA confirmed it. Yes, so I heard. Victoria swirled her drink. DNA is a fascinating science. Reveals connections we never knew existed, of course. It can also be corrupted, manipulated. She took a measured sip. Like people. Why do you hate me so much? Grace asked directly. Victoria's smile never reached her eyes. Hate requires emotional investment. I simply recognize a threat when I see one. I'm not a threat unless you have something to hide. We all have something to hide, my dear. Victoria set down her glass. Even you, for instance. Your little meeting with Stevens today? Grace stiffened. You had me followed. I have eyes everywhere in this house. I've spent decades protecting the Ellison legacy. Did you think I wouldn't notice you conspiring with the gardener? He was just showing me the greenhouse." Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Please. Stevens has been acting strangely ever since you arrived. I wonder what tales he's been spinning." Thunder rumbled outside, matching the tension in the room. Victoria moved closer, her voice dropping. "Whatever he told you, consider the source. A senile old man, desperate for attention, hardly reliable." "He seemed quite lucid to me," Grace countered. Victoria studied her for a long moment. "You know, there's still time to make a different choice. A settlement, generous enough to set you up for life. In exchange for your discretion." "You mean in exchange for disappearing again?" "I mean in exchange for not destroying everything Richard has built." Victoria's facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine emotion. "He's only now recovering from losing Eleanor and Sophia. If you tear open those wounds with wild accusations—" "The truth isn't an accusation," Grace said quietly. Victoria's eyes hardened. "Truth is whatever we decide it is." She moved to leave, then paused at the door. "Think about my offer. It won't remain open indefinitely." After Victoria left, Grace remained in the library, shaken by the encounter. The storm broke outside, rain lashing against the windows, as if nature itself reflected the turbulence within the manor. She found herself drawn to a section of the library paneled differently from the rest. Acting on instinct, she pressed against it, feeling it give slightly. A hidden door swung open, revealing a small alcove lined with cushions. A child's secret hideaway. Heart racing, Grace entered the space. Crayon drawings still adorned the walls. Stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Me. In the corner sat a small wooden box. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a child's drawing of a heart-shaped locket, in uneven letters across the bottom. "My special necklace from Mommy." Grace sank to the cushions, the drawing clutched in her hand, as memories crystallized with sudden clarity. This had been her secret place, her refuge. She'd hidden here when playing, when upset, when seeking solitude. The same place she'd been hiding the night Victoria took her away. The boardroom of Ellison Industries hummed with anticipation. 14 executives in expensive suits exchanged curious glances as Richard Ellison entered. Followed by Grace, Victoria arrived last, taking her usual seat at Richard's right hand, her face a perfect mask of professional detachment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. 23 years ago, my daughter Sophia disappeared. Today, I'm overjoyed to announce that she has been found. The room erupted in murmurs. Richard raised a hand for silence. DNA testing has confirmed beyond doubt that Grace Sullivan is my daughter, Sophia Ellison. Victoria's pen snapped in her grip, blue ink staining her fingers. Over the coming months, Richard continued, Sophia will be integrated into company operations, learning all aspects of Ellison Industries in preparation for eventually assuming her rightful role. An older board member leaned forward. Richard, this is extraordinary news, but surely such a transition requires careful consideration. Miss Sullivan, or Miss Ellison, has no experience in corporate leadership. She has my blood, Richard replied firmly, and she'll have the best teachers. Myself included, the succession plan remains unchanged. Only the successor has changed. Victoria dabbed the ink from her hands, her voice coolly professional. While we all share Richard's happiness, we must consider shareholder confidence. An announcement of this magnitude could destabilize stock prices without proper preparation. Which is why, Richard countered, we're developing a comprehensive communication strategy before going public. For now, this stays within these walls. The meeting continued, but Grace barely heard the discussion of quarterly projections and market expansions. Her focus remained on Victoria, who participated with mechanical efficiency while steadfastly avoiding eye contact with her. Afterward, Richard was pulled into a meeting with international investors. Grace found herself alone in the corridor with Victoria. Congratulations on your corporate debut, Victoria said, voice dripping with disdain. Quite the performance. It wasn't a performance. No. Victoria stepped closer. Tell me, what exactly do you hope to accomplish here? You have no business experience, no understanding of what Richard has built. Yet you're content to step in and claim it all. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? Victoria's smile was razor sharp. I've spent 20 years helping Richard build this empire while you were, where, exactly, serving drinks, and now you expect to waltz in and take over. Grace met her gaze steadily. I expect to know the truth about what happened to me, about what you did. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Alarm, quickly masked. Careful with accusations, dear. Slander is actionable. It's not slander if it's true, and Mr. Stevens saw you that night. Victoria's composure slipped for a fraction of a second. Stevens is a senile old fool. No one would believe him over me. Her phone chimed with a message. She glanced at it, then back at Grace. This conversation is over, but remember my offer. It still stands. For now. She walked away, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Jeffrey Landon sat across from Grace in a quiet corner of the Manor's conservatory, his notebook open. Stevens is willing to make a formal statement, Grace explained, but he's afraid of retaliation from Victoria. The investigator nodded. Understandable. She wields considerable influence in Charleston. Can we protect him? Potentially, but his testimony alone isn't enough. It's circumstantial. One man's word against a respected businesswoman's. Landon tapped his pen thoughtfully. We need more. Something concrete linking Victoria to your abduction. Like what? The man Stevens saw with her. If we could identify him. Grace sighed in frustration. It was 23 years ago. How would we even begin to find him? By following the money, Landon said simply. People don't commit kidnapping for free. If Victoria paid this man, there's a record somewhere. Would those records still exist after all this time? Banks keep transaction histories for decades. The trick is getting access. Landon closed his notebook. I've requested Victoria's financial records from 2002 as part of the investigation. Richard approved it this morning. Grace's eyes widened. Does she know? Not yet, but she will. Landon's expression grew serious. When she finds out, she'll likely take defensive action. Things could get dangerous. For you, for Stevens, even for Richard. What should we do? Proceed carefully. Don't confront her again until we have irrefutable evidence. He stood to leave. And Miss Ellison? I'd watch your back. People who've kept secrets this long rarely surrender them without a fight. That evening, Grace stood before Eleanor Ellison's grave in the private cemetery on the estate grounds. The marble headstone was simple yet elegant, much like the photographs Grace had seen of her mother. I wish I remembered you better, she whispered, placing white roses against the stone. I have fragments. Your voice, your smile, the way you smelled of vanilla. But it's not enough. The sound of footsteps on gravel made her turn. Richard approached, his face solemn in the fading light. I come here often, he said, standing beside her, especially when I need to think. I'm starting to remember her, Grace said quietly. Little things. Richard smiled sadly. She would sing to you every night. That melody, it was her mother's, passed down. She said our children's children would sing it someday. I wish she could see that I came back. She knows. Richard placed his hand on the headstone. She never gave up hope, even when everyone else. Even when I began to lose faith, Eleanor insisted you were alive. They stood in companionable silence until Richard spoke again. Victoria is furious about the financial investigation. I imagined she would be. She threatened to resign from the company. Richard sighed heavily. In all our years working together, I've never seen her this desperate. Are you having doubts? Grace asked. About you? No. His voice was firm. The DNA is irrefutable. But about Victoria's involvement, it's difficult to reconcile the sister I've known my whole life with someone capable of such a heinous act. People aren't always what they seem, Grace said gently. No, they aren't. Richard turned to her. Landon found something. A withdrawal of $50,000 from Victoria's personal account on October 3rd, 2002. The day after you disappeared. Cash, no record of where it went. Grace felt a chill despite the warm evening. That's significant. It's circumstantial, Richard cautioned. But coupled with Stevens' testimony, the picture is becoming clearer. As they walked back toward the manor, Richard asked, Are you ready for tomorrow's press conference? It will change everything. Once the world knows you've returned, I'm ready, Grace assured him. I've lived in the shadows long enough. In the guest house, Victoria poured herself a third whiskey, her hands shaking as she scrolled through emails on her laptop. The subject line of Landon's message to the bank stood out starkly. Request for financial records. Victoria Ellison, 2002-2003. Damn him, she whispered, slamming the laptop shut. She moved to the window, watching Richard and Grace return from the cemetery. They walked closely, conversing with the easy familiarity of family. Richard laughed at something Grace said. A genuine laugh, something Victoria hadn't heard in years. For a moment, regret flashed across her face, quickly replaced by resolve. She picked up her phone and dialed. It's me, she said when the call connected. We have a problem. They're accessing the bank records. She listened, growing more agitated. No, that's not acceptable. You were paid to ensure this never came to light. The voice on the other end spoke at length. Victoria's expression hardened. Fine, double your usual fee. Just make sure it's handled before the press conference tomorrow. She ended the call, then opened her desk drawer, removing a small silver object, a heart-shaped locket on a broken chain. Victoria stared at it, lost in memories of a night 23 years ago when jealousy and resentment had driven her to the unthinkable. She'd kept the locket as a reminder, a trophy of sorts, and now it might be her undoing. She snapped the locket shut and returned it to the drawer. Then she reached for the whiskey again, her reflection in the window glass staring back at her with accusatory eyes. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Richard's study as the final preparations for the press conference took place. In just 3 hours, the world would learn that Sophia Ellison had returned from the dead. Grace sat at the piano, absently playing the familiar melody that had started everything. The notes came naturally now. Muscle memory awakened after decades of dormancy. You play beautifully, Richard said, entering with 2 coffee cups. Just like your mother. Grace smiled, accepting the coffee. It's strange. My hands remember things my mind doesn't. Dr. Marshall says that's common with childhood trauma. Procedural memories often survive when explicit ones don't. Richard sat beside her on the bench. How are you feeling about today? Nervous, she admitted. Once this goes public, there's no going back. Having second thoughts. Not about who I am, Grace clarified, but about everything that comes with being Sophia Ellison. The attention, the scrutiny, the responsibility. Richard nodded, understanding. You don't have to take any role you don't want. Being my daughter doesn't obligate you to join the company. I know, but I want to understand that part of my heritage too. She took a deep breath. Have you spoken with Victoria? Richard's expression darkened. She's not returning my calls. Landon says she withdrew another large cash amount yesterday. You think she's planning to run? I don't know what to think anymore. He set down his cup. The Victoria I thought I knew would never harm a child, especially her own niece. But the evidence. People can surprise you, Grace said quietly, both for better and worse. A knock interrupted them. Landon entered, his face grave. Sir, we have a situation. Mr. Stevens is missing. Richard stood. Missing how? He didn't report for work this morning. His cottage is empty, bed unslept in. His truck is still in the garage, but he's nowhere on the grounds. Grace felt a chill. This isn't a coincidence. I've alerted security, Landon continued. They're searching the estate now. Richard's phone rang. Victoria? He put it on speaker. Where are you? He demanded without preamble. In your study in 15 minutes, Victoria replied, her voice unnaturally calm. Just you and the imposter. No Landon, no security. Victoria, if you've done something to Stevens, 15 minutes. Richard, or the press conference will have a very different headline. The line went dead. Landon shook his head. Sir, you can't meet her alone. It's too dangerous. She's my sister, Richard said firmly. And regardless of what she's done, I need to hear her explanation. Then let me at least position security nearby, Landon insisted. Richard nodded reluctant agreement. But discreetly, Victoria's desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. After Landon left to make arrangements, Grace turned to Richard. I should be there too. Whatever happened, it happened to me. Richard studied her face. So much like Eleanor's. yet with his own determination in her eyes. "All right. Together then." Precisely 15 minutes later, Victoria entered the study. She was immaculately dressed in an expensive charcoal suit, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed her inner turmoil. "Quite the family reunion," she remarked coolly, noting Grace's presence. Richard stood behind his desk. "Where's Stevens?" Victoria waved dismissively. "The gardener is fine, taking an unscheduled vacation. He'll return when this situation is resolved." "You threatened him," Grace accused. "I merely helped him understand the consequences of spreading malicious falsehoods." Victoria moved to the bar cart, pouring herself a drink with steady hands. "Rather generous of me, considering." Richard's patience evaporated. "Enough games." "Victoria, we know what you did." Victoria turned, eyebrow raised. "And what exactly is it you think I did, Richard?" "You took Sophia," he said, voice raw with pain and anger. "Your own niece. Stevens saw you that night with a man, carrying her to a car. The bank records show you withdrew $50,000 cash the next day." Victoria took a measured sip. "Circumstantial, the word of an old gardener against mine. Money that could have been for anything, please." "Why?" Grace asked, stepping forward. "Why would you do something so cruel?" Victoria's eyes locked on Grace, cold and calculating. "Let's assume, for argument's sake, that your little fairy tale is true, that I somehow orchestrated the disappearance of my niece. What could possibly motivate such an act?" "Jealousy," Richard answered quietly. "Eleanor suspected it. You resented her, resented the family we created, the family that pushed you to the margins." Something flickered in Victoria's expression, a crack in the facade. "Margins," she repeated, voice dangerously soft. "Is that what you think?" She laughed, a bitter sound. "I was never on the margins, Richard. I was invisible, completely invisible." She set down her glass with deliberate care. "Do you have any idea what it was like? Growing up as your shadow? Richard's brilliant, Richard's successful. Why can't you be more like your brother? Then you married perfect Eleanor, had perfect Sophia, while I was the spinster sister, the afterthought." "That's not true," Richard protested. "I always valued you." "As what? Your assistant, your backup?" Victoria's composure began to fracture. "Even after they were gone, I was still second best. You mourned them so completely. There was nothing left for anyone else. 23 years, Richard. I ran your company, managed your fortune, kept your world turning while you grieved. And still it was always Eleanor and Sophia." "So you punished an innocent child?" Grace asked incredulously. "Destroyed your brother's family out of jealousy." Victoria's gaze swung to her, suddenly ablaze. "You don't get to judge me. You have no idea what it's like to be overlooked your entire life, to pour everything into someone who never truly sees you." "I loved you," Richard said, stunned by her outburst. "You're my sister. You tolerated me," Victoria corrected bitterly. "There's a difference." Grace stepped closer, her voice steady. "What happened that night, I deserve to know." Victoria stared at her for a long moment. Then at Richard. Something in her seemed to collapse inward, the fight draining away. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," she said finally, her voice hollow. "I just wanted her gone for a while, just long enough to make you see me again." "Richard," Richard gripped the edge of his desk. "What are you saying?" "I paid him to take her to a family upstate, people who couldn't have children, who would give her a good home. She was supposed to be safe, cared for." Victoria's voice cracked. "But he got nervous, said it was too risky, too traceable. He took her to the orphanage instead, left her there like discarded property." Grace felt the room spinning. "You never intended for me to come back." "I never intended for you to be harmed," Victoria corrected. "There's a difference." Richard's face had gone ashen. "My God, Victoria. Do you hear yourself? You stole my child. You let me think she was dead or worse for 23 years. You watched Eleanor die of grief." "I made a mistake," Victoria whispered. "One terrible mistake that I couldn't take back. And then it was too late. Too much time had passed. The lie became my life. A mistake." Richard's voice rose in disbelief. You destroyed our family. I was protecting what was left of it, Victoria shouted back. After Eleanor died, you were suicidal, Richard, who pulled you back from that edge, who kept the company from collapsing while you were lost in grief. Me. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver object, tossing it onto the desk. The heart-shaped locket landed with a soft thud. There, the final piece of your puzzle. Victoria's voice was suddenly exhausted. He took it from her that night, gave it to me as proof the job was done. Grace stared at the locket, transfixed. Slowly, she reached for it, feeling its familiar weight in her palm. With trembling fingers, she opened it, revealing the tiny photograph of Eleanor inside. All these years, she whispered, closing her hand around it. Victoria watched her, something like regret crossing her face. For what it's worth, which I'm sure is nothing. I am sorry, not just for being caught, but for what I did. The moment I saw your face at the fundraiser, I knew it was you, and I knew my time was up. Richard stood frozen, torn between rage and devastation. Get out, he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. Get out of my house, out of my company, out of my life. Victoria nodded once, accepting the verdict. At the door, she paused, looking back at the family she had destroyed and that now stood reunited despite her. What happens now? She asked softly. Richard's answer was ice. Now you leave. What happens after that depends on what you've done with Stevens. Check the boathouse, Victoria said. He's unharmed, just contained. She met Grace's eyes one last time. Goodbye, Sophia. I hope you'll be happier in this life than you would have been in the one I stole. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. In the silence that followed, Grace moved to Richard's side, still clutching the locket. Father and daughter stood together, bound by blood and by the truth that had finally come to light. The confession was complete. The shadows of the past had finally taken form in the harsh light of the present. Sophia Ellison, the name still felt foreign on her tongue, despite legally reclaiming it 2 weeks ago, stood before a mirror in what was once her childhood bedroom. The press conference had gone exactly as planned, generating headlines worldwide. Ellison heiress returns after 23 years. DNA confirms, missing daughter found. The miracle of Ellison Manor. Victoria's involvement had been carefully omitted from the public narrative. As far as the world knew, Sophia had been abducted by unknown persons and abandoned at St. Lucia Orphanage, where she grew up as Grace Sullivan until a chance encounter brought her home. It was cleaner that way. For the company, for the family reputation, for everyone involved. A soft knock drew her attention. Richard stood in the doorway, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. The car will be here in 20 minutes, he reminded her. Sophia nodded, fastening the repaired silver locket around her neck. I'm almost ready. Today marked her first official appearance as a board member of Ellison Industries, a position Richard had insisted upon, despite her initial reluctance. Start by learning, he'd advised. The rest will come naturally. Any word from Victoria? She asked. Adjusting her blazer, Richard's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Her lawyer called. The transfer of her shares to you is complete. She's liquidating her other assets. Where will she go? Europe, apparently. Switzerland, or perhaps Italy. He shrugged. I didn't ask for details. The aftermath of Victoria's confession had been handled with surgical precision. No charges were filed. A mutual decision between Sophia and Richard. After lengthy consideration, Stevens had been found unharmed in the boathouse, bound but otherwise comfortable, with no interest in pressing charges himself. The man Victoria had hired that night remained unidentified, the trail long cold. Do you think she'll ever come back? Sophia asked. Richard considered this. I don't know. 23 years of deception isn't easily forgiven or forgotten. No, Sophia agreed quietly. It isn't. The board meeting went smoothly, Sophia observing more than participating as Richard guided the discussion on international expansion. Afterward, they drove directly to St. Lucia Orphanage, where Sister Catherine waited on the porch steps. Look at you, the nun marveled, embracing Sophia. Sophia Ellison at last. You found your way home. Thanks in large part to you, Sophia replied warmly. Inside Sister Catherine's modest office, Richard presented a check that made the elderly woman gasp. "Mr. Ellison, this is far too generous." "Not at all," Richard insisted. "St. Lucia cared for my daughter when I couldn't. This endowment will ensure you can continue caring for children who need you for generations to come." Sister Catherine dabbed at her eyes. "The Lord works in mysterious ways. All these years, I knew there was something special about you, Grace. Sophia, a purpose greater than we understood. I want to be involved," Sophia added. "Not just financially, but personally. These children need advocates, connections to the outside world." "You always did have the biggest heart," Sister Catherine smiled. "Even when you first arrived, so confused and frightened, you were the one comforting the younger children." As they toured the facility, memories surfaced for Sophia, happy ones. Surprisingly, despite the circumstances that brought her here, St. Lucia had provided stability, education, and genuine care. It had shaped her as much as her forgotten first 5 years at Ellison Manor. "I'm establishing a foundation," she told Richard as they left. "The Eleanor Ellison Foundation for Children's Welfare, to help places like St. Lucia, but also to fund research into child trauma and recovery." Richard squeezed her hand. "Your mother would be so proud." Back at the manor, Sophia found Mr. Stevens tending the white roses, his weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. Despite his age, after Victoria's departure, Richard had promoted him to head groundskeeper, with a substantial raise and a new cottage on the property. "They're beautiful," Sophia commented. Approaching, Stephen straightened, smiling. "Your mother's favorites. I've kept this garden exactly as she designed it all these years. Thank you for that, and for your courage in coming forward." The old gardener shook his head. "Should have done it 23 years ago. Might have spared you all that time lost. Or Victoria might have found another way to silence you," Sophia said gently. "We can't rewrite the past, but we can honor it by how we shape the future." She helped him deadhead a few spent blooms, the simple task connecting her to both her past and present. Eleanor had taught her this, she realized. One of the fragments of memory that had returned, mother and daughter in this very garden, white petals against small fingers. "Will you tell me about her?" Sophia asked. "My mother. The small things that don't make it into photo albums or official histories." Stephen smiled, setting aside his clippers. "She sang while she gardened, always barefoot, no matter how many times your father scolded her about thorns. She'd say life was too short for sensible shoes in a garden." Sophia closed her eyes, letting the image form. "What else?" "She'd bring you out here every morning. You'd have your little watering can, taking your job very seriously. She'd tell you that growing things was like raising children. You provide the right conditions, then trust them to find their own way toward the light." Tears pricked behind Sophia's eyelids. "I wish I remembered her better." "You will," Stevens assured her. "Bit by bit. The important parts are already there, in how you move, how you see the world. You're her daughter in more ways than DNA." That evening, Richard invited the entire staff to gather in the main hall. Dozens of people, groundskeepers, housekeepers, kitchen staff, security, assembled curiously. "For many of you," Richard began, "this house has felt like a mausoleum for over 2 decades, a place preserved in grief. Today marks a new chapter for Ellison Manor, and I want to thank each of you for your loyalty through the darkest years." He gestured to Sophia, who joined him. "My daughter's return is nothing short of miraculous, but miracles don't erase the past. They build upon it. This house will now be a home again, filled with light and life as it was always meant to be." Mrs. Winters, who had served the family for over 30 years, wiped away a tear. "It's like having a piece of Mrs. Ellison back with us." After the gathering dispersed, Sophia and Richard walked the grounds in the fading twilight, eventually finding themselves at Eleanor's grave in the family cemetery. "I've decided to stay," Sophia said, placing fresh white roses against the headstone. "Not just for the company or the foundation, but here, in this house." Richard smiled. "It is your home. It's becoming that again," she agreed. Slowly, they stood in companionable silence until Richard spoke again. "I received a letter today, from Victoria." Sophia turned to him, surprised. "What did it say?" "Very little, actually. that she's settled in Geneva, that she's seeing a therapist, that she doesn't expect forgiveness but wanted us to know she's reckoning with what she did. Do you believe her? Richard sighed heavily. I want to, despite everything. She's still my sister, the only family I had for 23 years. Until now, Sophia said quietly. Until now, he agreed, taking her hand. As darkness fell over Charleston, lights glowed warmly from the windows of Ellison Manor, no longer a shrine to loss, but a home being carefully, hopefully rebuilt. In her Geneva apartment, Victoria Ellison sat alone, staring at a photograph of herself, Richard and Eleanor, taken decades ago before jealousy poisoned everything. The weight of her actions had finally caught up with her, leaving her with nothing but regret and the hollow victory of having kept her freedom. She opened her laptop and transferred another substantial sum to a foundation that helped orphaned children, an anonymous donation, one of many she'd made since leaving Charleston. It wouldn't undo the damage, wouldn't earn forgiveness, but it was something. A beginning, perhaps, to her own reconstruction. Back at the manor, Sophia stood at her bedroom window, watching the moonlight transform the white roses into silver blooms. The locket felt warm against her skin, a tangible connection to the mother she'd lost and the identity she'd regained. The melody came to her unbidden, and she hummed it softly in the darkness, no longer a haunting echo of loss, but a thread connecting past to present, weaving broken pieces into something whole again. 1 year later, Ellison Manor glowed with warmth and light. The grand ballroom, once a place of stiff formality, now hummed with laughter as children raced between elegant tables. It was the first annual fundraising gala for the Eleanor Ellison Foundation, and Sophia had insisted it be family-friendly, a celebration that included the very children they sought to help. Aunt Sophia, a small girl in a blue party dress, tugged at Sophia's hand. Come see what we made. Sophia allowed herself to be led to a corner where children from St. Lucia Orphanage had created an elaborate thank you card. Handprints in rainbow colors formed a border around carefully printed words. Thanks for helping us find our way home, too. It's beautiful, Lily, Sophia smiled, kneeling to the child's level. I'll treasure it always. In the year since reclaiming her identity, Sophia had transformed both herself and the Ellison legacy. The foundation had already funded renovations at 3 orphanages, established college scholarships for foster children, and launched a pioneering therapy program for kids with trauma-related memory loss. Meanwhile, at Ellison Industries, she'd spearheaded a corporate responsibility initiative that tied company success to community impact. Richard watched from across the room, chest swelling with pride. At 60, he looked younger than he had in decades. The burden of grief lifted, replaced by purpose and joy. You've done remarkable work, said Dr. Marshall, appearing at his side with champagne flutes. Both of you. Richard accepted the glass with a nod. Sophia deserves most of the credit. She's brought new life to everything she touches. Rather like Eleanor that way, the doctor observed. Same compassionate spirit. Yes, Richard agreed, watching his daughter move easily among guests, making each person feel specially seen. Though she has strengths all her own, the board is already talking about her taking over as CEO within 5 years. And how do you feel about that? Richard smiled. Ready. More than ready. He sipped his champagne. 23 years of living half a life. I'm looking forward to fishing, traveling, maybe writing those memoirs everyone keeps pestering me about. Speaking of memoirs, Dr. Marshall lowered his voice. Have you heard from Victoria? Richard's expression sobered. Christmas card, birthday card, occasional updates through her lawyer. Nothing substantial. And Sophia. They've exchanged a few letters. Cautious, formal at first, recently, a bit more. Human, Richard shrugged. I don't know if reconciliation is possible after what she did, but Sophia seems open to the possibility. More than I am, truthfully. Forgiveness is a complex journey, Dr. Marshall remarked, one that happens in its own time, if at all. Across the ballroom, Sophia excused herself from a conversation with donors and slipped out onto the terrace for a moment of quiet. The spring night was mild, jasmine scenting the air from the gardens below. Escaping your own party? A familiar voice asked. Mr. Stevens stood near the balustrade, looking distinguished in a new suit, his weathered face relaxed in retirement, Though no longer working the grounds, he remained at Ellison Manor as a treasured family friend, occupying a cottage on the property. "Just catching my breath," Sophia smiled. "It's been quite a year, hasn't it?" "Indeed it has, Miss Sophia." The old gardener's eyes crinkled warmly. "Your mother would be bursting with pride." "I hope so." Sophia touched her locket, a habit she'd developed, drawing comfort from its familiar weight. "Sometimes I worry I'm not doing enough, not making enough difference." Stevens chuckled. "You've changed the lives of hundreds of children already, given hope to places like St. Lucia that were barely keeping the lights on. If that's not enough, I don't know what would be. There's just so much more to do," Sophia sighed. "Always will be. That's how you know you're on the right path. It stretches further than you can see." Inside, the band began playing a slow, familiar tune. The melody, her melody, filled the night air. "Dad's idea," Sophia explained, smiling. "He had the band learn it, says it should be the Foundation's anthem." "A fitting choice," Stevens agreed. "A link between past and future." Sophia's phone chimed softly. A message from an international number, Victoria. She hesitated before opening it. "I saw the Foundation's work featured in Geneva's financial paper. Eleanor would be proud, as am I, for whatever that's worth. V, simple, direct, no excuses or pleas for forgiveness." Sophia stared at the screen, conflicted emotions washing through her. "Difficult news?" Stevens inquired gently. "Not exactly." Sophia showed him the message. "My aunt. She follows the Foundation's progress. Apparently." The elderly gardener nodded thoughtfully. "Some sins can never be fully atoned for, but that doesn't mean the sinner stops trying. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to forgive her completely," Sophia admitted. "But lately I've been thinking, holding on to anger doesn't punish her. It only weighs me down." Wise perspective. "Besides," Sophia continued, "in a strange, twisted way I owe her something. The person I became at St. Lucia, Grace Sullivan, she shaped me too, made me stronger, more compassionate, more aware of what truly matters." After a moment's consideration, she typed a reply. "Thank you. The Geneva Children's Center will be our next international partnership. Perhaps you could be our local liaison." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was an opening, a small bridge across a vast chasm. Inside, Richard approached the microphone as the band finished their number. The room quieted expectantly. "Where's our guest of honor?" he asked, scanning the crowd. "Ah, there she is." Sophia returned from the terrace, smiling self-consciously as applause filled the room. "1 year ago," Richard began, "a miracle happened. My daughter, lost for 23 years, found her way home. Most families would consider that enough good fortune for a lifetime, but Sophia wasn't content with her own happy ending." He gestured to the seat Lucia children seated at tables of honor. She insisted that other children deserve the same chance at family, stability, and hope. In just 1 year, the Eleanor Ellison Foundation has impacted over 500 children across 3 states. Next month, we break ground on the first Eleanor Ellison Children's Center in Atlanta. With more planned nationwide, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Richard raised his glass. To Sophia, who turned personal tragedy into a mission of transformation, and to Eleanor, whose spirit lives on in her daughter's work. Later, as the last guest departed, Sophia found herself in her father's study. The piano that had started everything stood in the corner, moonlight spilling across its polished surface. She sat at the bench, fingers finding the keys without conscious thought. The melody flowed, the lullaby that had bridged 23 years of separation, that had led her home. Richard appeared in the doorway, watching silently until she finished. "I've been thinking," Sophia said without turning, "about Victoria." Richard tensed slightly. "What about her?" "I've offered her a role with the Foundation, overseeing our Geneva project." A long pause followed. "Are you sure that's wise?" "Honestly, no." Sophia turned to face him. "But I'm sure it's right. For me, at least. I need to move forward without the weight of unresolved hatred." Richard studied his daughter's face. So like Eleanor's, yet uniquely her own. "Your capacity for grace continually amazes me. I was named for it, after all." She smiled, referencing her years as Grace Sullivan. He moved to sit beside her on the piano bench. "Whatever you decide, I support you." Together, they played the melody one more time, father and daughter, past and present harmonizing into something new. Outside, the white roses gleamed silver in the moonlight, much as they had decades ago when Eleanor planted them. The grounds of Ellison Manor, once haunted by loss, now bloomed with renewed purpose. The echo of that old melody carried beyond the walls, no longer a lament for what was taken, but a promise of what could yet be. In her Geneva apartment, Victoria Ellison read Sophia's message with trembling hands. It wasn't forgiveness, perhaps that would never come, but it was something she'd never expected, an opportunity to contribute to healing the very type of wound she'd created. She glanced at the framed photo on her desk, Richard, Eleanor, and little Sophia in happier days, and for the first time in decades, the sight brought not jealousy, but a bittersweet recognition of what she'd destroyed, and what might, in some small way, still be rebuilt. Some debts could never be repaid, some wounds would always leave scars, but as the melody had found its way back to Sophia across 23 years of silence, perhaps some forms of redemption could find their way forward too, not erasing the past, but transforming it into something that could, at last, bring healing rather than harm.